Well, summer's here.
I don't know about that.
It's
Is it
getting
an
hot.
official day of summer
It's
yet?
getting hot.
Oh, it's in June.
Yeah, I'm talking about temperature.
Oh, temperature wise, okay. I do sweat more often than I want to. That's a sure sign.
I tell you what, we've gotten really blessed with, weather.
All right, 10 seconds left. All right. I'll now call to order this meeting of the City of White House Council Workshop for May the 13th of 2025. It is 6 p.m. Ms. Nichols, will you please call the roll?
James Wansley,
Here.
Zach Briscoe,
Here.
Francel Burns, John Chambers, Michael Lowe,
Here.
Matt Lazary.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we are called to order. We're ready for item B, other action items, ordinances, resolutions, public hearings. The item for discussion is discussion of pending legislation and future strategies relating to the city's ability to issue certain debt instruments to fund critical infrastructure and other capital projects. Mrs. Black.
Mayor and Council, as you all are aware, there are certain items pending in the Texas State Legislature right now that could impact the city's ability to issue future debt for critical infrastructure and capital projects that we've been discussing for quite some time. So I wanted to get some information in front of you tonight so that if you would like to take action, you have that availability. And if not, that's okay. We will find out some different strategies should that legislation pass. But Senate Bill 1024 and House Bill 19 are seeing some movement right now in the state legislature, and both of them have caps on the amount of debt that a city could issue. One is a 5-year average of your debt service. The other is limited to, that's a 20% cap, I believe. The other one limits it to a much lower amount. That we are seeing some movement at Senate Bill 1024, which was heard in committee on Monday. The way I understand it from some legal counsel, not our legal counsel, but another attorney, is that the legislatures already have a substitute bill that they will be substituting. Once that comes out of committee, it will be set for calendar. So we're particularly concerned about how that can impact some projects that you all have been discussing over the last couple of years, particularly City Hall renovation and expansion, fire station project, any impacts that may have to City Park here, a couple of neighborhood park projects, and then some public works projects that we've all been discussing. And so wanted to get some financial information in front of you ahead of our May 27th City Council meeting. So municipal bonds, in this case, certificates of obligation, are debt instruments issued by local government. There are a few key terms here. Par value is the face value of the bond, so the amount of money that you're borrowing. Coupon rate was the annual interest rate paid to investors. And then basis points, you will see when we get into the specialized public finance presentation, that they refer to basis points, and that's just also another term for interest rate. So in this presentation that we're going to talk about tonight, we're particularly talking about certificates of obligation. That's just one form of debt instrument that cities can use. The other are general obligation bonds, which are required to go to the voters. And then you also have things like tax notes that have a maximum maturity of 7 years, revenue bonds, some of those types of things. But certificates of obligation and general obligation bonds are the two most common. Certificates of obligation are repaid either by property taxes, system revenues. So if you issue certificates of obligation, you can pay them back with water and sewer revenues if they're water and sewer related projects. Same for stormwater. You can pay for stormwater projects with your stormwater fee, or you can use a combination of both. One of the benefits of COs is that they're a little bit more flexible than general obligation bonds. In particular, the legislature is also working to move all general obligation elections to November. And so that will limit cities' ability to issue debt to one time a year if that passes. When we talk about COs, there are some legal and public transparency requirements. So there is a 45-day notice period before the issuance. Citizens can petition to require an election. I think it requires a 5% of your voters to complete that petition, and then it would go to an election. But it is a significant part of our long-term financial planning and has been for quite some time. As I mentioned, we have several projects that this could significantly impact, being the fire station, City Hall, parks, and public works projects. When we spoke to Specialized Public Finance, we had them run a total cost of $15 million at a 20-year term at 4.58 basis points or 458 basis points. They think that that is the interest rate that we can expect, with a small cushion in there for any variance that may come about by the time we get to closing, which would be in August. The annual debt service, when we get to that part of the presentation, you will see that the actual amount that's needed for our annual debt service varies throughout the term of that note, but we have kept the overall INS tax rate flat and decreases over time. So it does not go above the current debt service tax rate that we have today.
So just a quick question, when you say significantly impacts the projects we've got on the radar here, just pushes them out further? We couldn't do them as quick as we'd like to do, or
You would you may not be able to do them at all.
because they'd have to go to the voters?
Not because it would have to go to the voters, but because the total debt service amount would exceed your last 3 to 5 year average.
Got it,
So you
okay.
would have to spread them out
Yeah,
so
you might be able to
far.
do one project at a time instead of
You
two.
might be able to do one project at a time, maybe, depending on the overall
size.
total of that project.
And then
So-
once it's paid down, or paid off, then you start another one?
Yes.
So it limits your growth potential.
So it's almost like you can't borrow money unless you borrowed a significant amount of money in the past.
In the last 3 years.
Right, so I
With
think
the
it
new
has the
legislation.
opposite impact that they want.
I know, that's what
It-
I'm saying.
It requires you to carry a larger load of debt up front.
Just to
and
make sure that
over
if something
time.
comes up, you can acquire that debt
Yes.
when needed. Yeah.
And if I understand, okay,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Mike.
if I understand, if it's up for an election, the greater percentage now is required for voters, right? 2/3 or,
That's another
Yeah,
item under
it's
consideration.
2/3.
I mean, that's pretty
That's
potent,
one thing that's in legislation, yes, is to require a
Pretty stout.
supermajority,
yeah.
larger than just greater than 50%.
So what do you think of,
I'm sorry,
no, your turn.
who's pushing the legislation? Is Governor Abbott behind it? Does it have?
It is
the-
one of his priorities. When you see like
Okay.
House Bill 19, actually I think it's probably a lieutenant governor priority when you get past the top 10. I think 10 through 20 are the lieutenant governor's priorities. But it's not the first time we've seen this kind of legislation. This kind of legislation comes up every legislative session. And I was feeling better when House Bill 19 was kind of sitting stagnant in committee until I found out that Senate Bill 1024 is moving and that they're expecting to put in a substitute bill.
And just a follow-up question to that one, what's motivating the state to want to do this?
I was
have no
just
idea.
fixing to ask that. What's the answer? You know,
Because if you look at the committee members, a lot of them are from the big cities, so this wouldn't make any, I mean,
maybe
course,
some
Houston
cities
carries
are
huge
getting in
amounts
a
of debt,
bind, not paying back
So I
their,
think there are a
Debt.
couple of things. Moving to November election, they feel like some cities
or abuse of the May election.
sneak things through because there are fewer voters in the May election. They're usually people that are very involved in local politics that show up for the May election. But I do think if I may speak freely, I think we are seeing the legislature attack
Sovereignty.
city sovereignty and the ability to self-govern at the local level, quite frankly.
it's pretty
And
popular.
that's common. States like New York and Connecticut that have been around for a long time, almost none of their municipal powers are there. It just, the more times the state legislature meets, the more power is gonna move away from municipalities. We just kinda have to adapt it, whatever's being thrown at us now. I think 50 years from now, there won't be a whole lot of municipal, we'll basically be fancy like homeowners associations that sell water and trash services.
So do you think this 4.58%, if that's the rate we end up getting, do you think that's a good fair percentage on that bond?
I do.
And is that helped by our credit rating going up in the recent year?
It does, so I'll show you kind of what municipal bond rates have done. So this is the municipal bond rates since
Ooh, can you imagine getting one at
61?
almost 13.5?
I remember those days too, I do. Really, it was horrible.
So you can see the current average, or the average over historically has been 5.42%.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's a long period, this isn't just looking at,
Yeah.
you know, any recent spikes or changes that may have happened, so.
And
It's
we have-
definitely higher than what we paid in 2022.
Is it?
But we have a better credit rating than we did in 2022. But interest rates are higher than they were in 2022, so maybe it'll kind of be a wash. Who knows?
So we do the bond, what are the risks? Like in a worst-case scenario, what could that do to us?
Economic downturn, I guess, would be the worst.
So, let's talk about, in the scenarios that I sent you, there are 4 scenarios. 1 and 2 were for 15 million, 3 and 4 were for 17 million. I say let's take the 17 million off the table. I don't think we can feasibly do that and keep our INS rate flat. So let's forget 3 and 4. Let's look at 1 and 2. Scenario 1 assumes a 5% assessed valuation growth rate through 2033. We have seen in excess of 5% growth in our assessed valuation for the last 10 years at least.
Yeah,
Longer than that, probably.
we went back to 2022, I think, when you and I were talking about it, or
Yeah.
2021.
So, you can see here in the estimated contribution from INS fund balance column. So we have, because of our conservative budgeting, we have some funds left in our INS account that we need to spend down. You don't wanna carry funds, a lot of funds in there. You wanna carry enough that if you have a major taxpayer that defaults on loan, you can still meet your debt payments, some of those kind of things. So they've taken that into account and estimate spending right at about $1 million out of our INS fund balance to keep our debt service rate flat for the next several years. Our risk, Councilman Briscoe, to answer your question, is that if we don't meet that 5% growth projection, okay, so if we don't hit 5% every year between now and 2033, if it's closer to 3%, it requires an additional contribution from our INS fund balance.
Got it, okay.
All right, which we have. This would,
Another $500,000 out of there.
yeah.
But at the same time, over the next couple of years, while we're getting these projects rolling, we'll be making some interest on this, right?
Well, we have to be careful about arbitrage and not
Arbitrage,
making
yeah.
too much interest on funds that we've borrowed. And when we do these bonds, we're kind of committing that we have projects identified and we'll spend it within 3 years.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
like
our
that.
goal, is to get it
Oh,
spent.
that'd be great to have these projects done in 3
That's
years.
gonna have you spinning,
I don't.
that's gonna
it'll
have
be-
you spinning a couple of plates there.
Yeah, it will. It's a little bit faster than what I would like to see if we did not have this pressure from the legislature. Just from a bandwidth perspective on our staff, finishing up City Center, Shahan Park, construction projects. I mean, we have some things going. Those are good problems to have, though.
And just so I'm clear, if we maintain the 5% growth rate, we see no change in cash flow at all, like on.
Tax rate change.
Right. So we don't,
It's business as usual for us, we just got,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, you have maintenance and operation, interest and sinking, those are pennies that are taken in for property taxes.
Right.
And what we're
right.
talking about here is interest and sinking having to go up to allow for that debt.
Right, right.
And this chart shows it won't have to go up, so that's, when they talk about this is a tax increase, which is what would appear at the top of the ballot if we were to put this to the voters, is this is a tax increase, it's actually not.
One of the questions Councilmember Lazary did ask me though is, if we do this, how does this affect maintenance and operations? And so if you don't do it, we obviously gain some capacity in about 2029 that could shift over to the maintenance and operations rate, right? Because if you weren't going to do this, let's see where my sheet is here.
Which could allow us to hire more officers or buy more fire trucks.
Right.
Right.
Let's see, so in 2029, our total amount of debt service for debt payments goes from, it's 2.345 right now. In fiscal year 2028, it would go to 2.1 and kind of goes down from there. So with that growth, right, your debt rate would shrink. So you're not gonna have that debt rate shrinking. I will say, if we put it on M&O, we will eat it up with new officers, new equipment, some of those kind of things, and it's hard to backtrack that back out when you need to do these capital projects.
But at the same time, part of our discussion, what I want to know is, would this still allow us to have growth in those areas with also not increasing taxes and still doing this? And if it does stay at the 5% growth, we will be able to increase staffing and or equipment and modestly in certain areas and to keep the tax rate the same.
Because whatever growth is happening on your INS tax rate is also happening on your M&O rate.
Okay.
So if you have 5% growth
Oh,
on your
good.
INS rate, it's also 5% growth in your M&O rate.
Okay.
So that allows for some of that bandwidth.
Yeah, that's a good question, cause on here it looks like the bonds are taking it all up.
Right.
All the
That's what-
5% growth,
yeah,
so
that's what I was
that's
wondering,
good,
so.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And, go ahead.
So devil's advocate, when you and I talked, we talked about the project's, rough cost, which could be vary by $1 million or $2 depending on when we build. If we went with 10 million instead of 15 million and then looked at doing a bond election for one of the projects that we think would probably get more voter approval, that's pushing out the time on it way out. There's no kind of guarantee because of the debt part of the bill that they're talking about.
Right, so I don't know what the bill is going to look like because they haven't submitted the substitution yet.
By the time
So
we find out, it may be too late.
by the time we find out, this option will no longer be an option. If it passes, right, there are a whole lot of ifs in this scenario, and I want to be very clear, neither I nor our financial advisors are trying to pressure you guys into anything. I just want to make sure you have the facts that we have to make informed decisions. But yes, that, it would push it out at least until November 2026 for an election, which means then you would close on the bonds February or March of 2027.
Which is 2030 before you get anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the facilities we need at City Hall and at the fire station are needed now, that's for sure, so.
Yeah, this
And
isn't,
no
this is,
effect on, I'm sorry.
no, it's just, this isn't dream projects. We need, our city's growing. We need this stuff.
Well, I
Yeah,
think it's all, huge opportunity to make a big impact for
yes.
a long time. I just wanna make sure we're not, and I know you've done the research, but, and on the operations part of it, but streets, our streets are in good shape right now, but could it have a negative impact on what we can continue to do to maintain our streets?
So we have about $1 million left in our street and stormwater COs from 2018, and part of our budget process this year will include a street repair and maintenance plan, which is something that we have not done since I've been here.
Good.
Identify possible projects for crack sealing or overlays or anything that may be needed out of that funding. So I do think we still have some opportunity to get some of those projects done as well. And they have done a complete street and roadway condition assessment over the past 6 months so that we've ranked all of our streets based on their status, and I think we can hit the worst condition ones.
In order to do these COs, do we have to specifically outline is that project we want to do, or if we have $2 million left over, we could use it for the roads?
So you have to spend it on whatever projects are identified in the caption of the ordinance.
Okay.
However, you
Keep
can
it
list
vague enough.
out plenty of options in that.
Because I would like to keep the roads as an option. If there is $2 million and we have a cost underrun here, we can spend a little bit there, I think that'd be
Yeah,
good.
we can identify streets, stormwater, water, wastewater, parks, facilities. I mean, you can kind of lump all those in together. You do want to be able to go to the community though and say,
Right.
here's our plan and here's where it's needed and here's what we're gonna do with it. And hold to that as much as you can. But I do think if you say we have $1.5 million dedicated for public works projects, including water, wastewater, streets, and stormwater.
Because there could be a potential at the end of building the fire station and building the city hall and doing some things with parks that we do have $1 million left for something like that, so, or more.
Or you don't, right? Like
Or you don't.
You do city center, which was more than what we were
It costs more,
anticipating, and
yeah.
so, you know, you just
We
gonna
just
make that
don't
work
know
as a mission.
everything, yeah.
And we're fortunate to have the streets that we have in
We are.
town, and, you know. I
And the
hate to
water
s-
and wastewater.
Oh,
and,
yeah, I would hate to see any of that go backwards, you know, but.
So I think interest rates that are shown there are well below what inflation is regarding commercial building, especially ADA compliant and everything else, commercial building that's going on there. So even if we started socking money away today for these projects to become whole in 4 years or 5 years, we'd still be upside down on
Yeah,
a
'cause
CO.
inflation rates, yeah.
Yeah, I think we wanna start putting these needed projects in place as soon as possible. We're facing liability issues in this building, facing liability issues in our firehouse. I think we need to make sure that we have an adequate space for both of those. The firehouse is one that I know what we wanna do there and where we wanna build it, and that's a pretty heavy lift. Like, we have to change the face of this park, which is a ballot item. Like, if you're gonna repurpose park space, it has to go to the voters. So if we can only do stuff in November, we're gonna have a 1-year cycle of trying to make that stuff happen.
And would it be, just again, I know we're talking about projects way down the line in steps, but Railroad and Hagan, would it be cheaper to build the fire station there versus remodeling here? I mean, I don't know if that's even been looked at. I hate to separate the facilities,
You just
but
asked a question I wanted to ask, that's good.
So I think the cost is probably the same. I think
Same.
you're looking at a tear down and a rebuild either way.
Okay.
I mean, there you wouldn't necessarily have to tear down, but you probably would tear down what's existing, so I don't,
yeah.
What putting it here does is keep all of our city facilities
In
local.
one, and I love the
And
chances.
once we have a big park over in Shahan, then the city park with its equipment is kind of redundant for what it is. So I love the concept of what's shown for the future of City Park, where we can have a street that connects all the way up to, what is that street that's Glenda? So that we have access. We've got a commercial resident down there that's never had a good option to get into their building. I think we kind of fell short on that promise back then.
So short of voters not approving the park change,
Yeah, that's what, but I think they would. So I think that if we tell the story well, I think they would. I'm just saying that pushes out the timeline on when we could get to the firehouse. And maybe that wouldn't be a $5 million project anymore, like we saw with City
Maybe
Center.
seven.
It would be a bigger one. That's my only concern with what we're allocating for that,
yeah.
is that we're not allowing for the building cost inflation in the time. And it's a good thing, because we can only do so much at once. Maybe it's good that that project is the last project, because we've got City Center's almost done. We'll be working on this one. We'll be working on parks. You know, we'll be working on the other projects that are going on. So there's only so many plates you can spin when it comes to building projects.
And I'll tell you,
Take a lot of time.
I'm for it, I just wanna be comfortable that we're not gonna set anything else back.
so worst case scenario, if we had 4% growth, I see here in 3%, you know, it's projecting what, $200,000, 100, then 200.
So there's your 3% growth projection.
So take a tick off that. That would have to come from,
From existing fund balance.
Existing
and
fund
our
balance.
bonus fund.
So just to reiterate Councilman Briscoe's question, is doing this gonna set us back on anything that we're currently caught up on or doing from the infrastructure or staffing or anything that you can think of? I'm asking you to use your crystal ball.
Yeah.
Do you have any concerns from that angle?
I don't. So I think we've done some great financial planning on both the M&O and the INS side of our tax rate. And I think we've poised ourselves well to grow. I think our biggest need on the maintenance operations side is gonna continue to be personnel. Because we are so lean in our operations right now. But I can only bring in personnel if I have somewhere to put them, and right now I don't have anywhere to put them if I wanted to hire them. So that's one of our big challenges that I see.
Is that issue going to be addressed with the renovation of City Hall? We'll have plenty of space?
Yes.
Because I know Jennifer wears 3 hats right now, but she was hired for 1 hat. And in her 25 years of here, how long have you been here?
22.
22 years of being here, has learned how to do the other hats. So when Jennifer goes away, she will be 2 people
if,
or 3
At
people.
least.
so if we issue these $15 million in COs, will that help? If the current law passes the way we think, will that help us with our debt amount for us to go forward on bonds? Would
Best
would
I
that
can
apply to
tell,
it?
I don't have a lot of guidance on what, when they say that you're gonna use your last 3 or 5 year debt service balance, I don't know what that means. I don't
Right.
know if that means your payment can't go up by more than 20 or 30%, or is it your total outstanding debt?
Because
There's
if we
too
took
many
on $15
unknowns.
million of debt, that would help us
It
in the
would.
future with bonds.
It would, but you're continually paying your debt down.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure how that's gonna work, because
Yeah,
you
year
would
3.
ideally, right, pay off your 20-year debt and then issue another 20-year debt or whatever, but you're paying that balance down every year, so by the time you get to the end of the term, it's fall off. I
Right.
don't know how that's gonna
Okay.
work.
So, if we issue the 15 million, and that would put our total number in bonds at, the number you got there. So how does that compare to like-sized cities? I mean, is that a big number, or have we been pretty conservative on what we've had out there, or?
I will say, so for me, when I came here, one of the things that shocked me, I'll come back to your question, Councilman Briscoe, but when you look at what our debt service rate was as a portion of our tax rate, when I came in 2020, it was about 65% of our overall tax rate. Most cities are significantly lower, and we've done a lot of work to lower that over my time here, as well as lowering the overall tax rate. I think it depends on a lot of different things. This is our debt to assessed value ratio, so you can kind of see how high that it's been. I don't have a city by city comparison.
Is that last chart considering if we took on the 15
No, this
million?
is just where we are currently. currently.
Where would it put us once we take on
Right.
15?
This would stay the same because our debt rate
Oh,
is
right.
not going to change,
Okay.
so this would stay the same. Our debt to assessed value, there's always a bump when you issue it, right? So you see where we issued the 2022 COs
Yeah.
here. This would have been another issuance when we did the blower room probably. So you'll see another spike in it if we were to issue it this year as well.
I
I
guess
don't
a
have the comparison
Yeah, that's,
to like.
that's fine. I was just
question
trying to
I've
get a-
got, it may not be relevant, but how much does it cost for asphalt per 100 feet or what? It ain't,
It's $1
well,
million
$1 million, but million a mile, okay. That's not cement,
If you're
that's
talking
asphalt.
about, cement and asphalt are basically the same cost these days.
Really?
There's not much difference.
If we take on this debt, do you think our credit rate and everything will be affected positively, negatively, or none?
I don't think it'll change because we just went through a re-rating
Okay.
in the last couple of months, so I think it'll stay, right
It's kind of like
where we
anything
are.
like they like to see you with a little bit of debt.
I think they just wanna make sure you're financially sound, so we're looking at a lot of things they take into account. Are you a growing city? Is this to accommodate that growth, which this certainly is? You know, just making sure that you're presenting your reasons well, I think will help maintain your rating, and I think we've done that. We've improved our financial position. I think 15 years ago, the city was struggling to make payroll. You know, and today we are looking at maybe 20, maybe that's 15's too short, but
So from here,
Not
do
that long
you just need us to vote on directing staff to
so
move
I
this
mean,
forward, or?
any vote from you tonight.
Okay.
If you do wanna take action though, you do have to issue a notice of intent at your May 27th city council meeting. So that's why I think this workshop was a great idea by Councilman Briscoe, so that we could talk through some of these things, so that you all can make a decision on May 27th. And we'll have specialized public finance here to go through some of those things as well.
And then we'd have a forum in the June meeting, and then vote on this in the July meeting if it moves forward.
Let me get to my calendar here. So you would have a meeting on May 27th where you would do your notice of intent. In June, we will start working on publications. We'll do our ratings call with S&P. Hopefully get our rating back July 7th. It will go to sale and you all will approve the sale on July 22nd if you were to move forward. And then we would close August 21st with our first payment being due in February of 2026. This also does a couple of things.
This allows for us to budget for it, right?
We may be able to help use this in our debt rate calculation. Jennifer and I will have to look at the timing and work with our bond attorneys on how that's gonna work. But understanding that we're keeping a flat debt rate, it's more on the calculation side for us, that it could have some impacts, so we just wanna make sure we're doing that appropriately, but.
So if these bills were to pass in the Senate and the House, what date would they take effect?
Bingo.
September 1st.
Okay.
So, starting right now is the only, it's the only course of getting it done in time.
Yeah.
And Mayor and Council, I hate that that's the position that we're in,
Yeah.
and it is still an if it takes effect. They may not, so I just wanna be very clear.
I think it's a wonderful heads up.
Yeah, I look at it from a
I'm
different
not
view.
trying to disguise all that.
I'm happy y'all are on top of this. and
Yes.
Gave us heads
Oh,
up so we didn't get
Very
caught September
much so.
1st, so.
Appreciate you.
Not
So
finding
it's-
out about it, in August.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now we can't do
I
it.
mean, I
Right.
really am grateful, you know.
So not that I have any doubt in what's being presented, from you, but just on a public perspective, do you think our financial advisors, Kevin, and I can't think of their name right up,
Kevin Cashin and,
would give us some kind of,
Are you looking for,
some kind of feedback?
Like a recommendation?
Recommendation or,
so I don't know that our auditor would, because
Or-
he's only looking
okay,
for if we're actually accounting for all the funds correctly. Specialized public finance could, they're the ones that gave me the heads up, and he said, hey, if you're looking to issue bonds, you need to
Now's
be
the
aware
time
of
to
this,
do it?
you need to be
Okay. I was
aware of
just
this legislation, because he knew we're continually talking about these projects a year or two in advance with them, and when we have our budget meetings every year, I think we've had them run this scenario probably 3 times by now, so, for these projects, so,
Yeah.
they're the ones that gave us the heads up, but
Okay,
he can
so they're-
certainly speak to whether it's gonna impact our rating, or any other implications that it may have that we haven't talked about, so I'll make sure they're prepared for that.
okay, no, I think that'd be a good idea to get that on the record.
they're the ones selling the bonds too.
They are the ones selling
So
bonds.
they'll tell you everything that can go wrong, as long as it doesn't. That's what their deal. No, I think that they'll be honest. They're pretty good about laying stuff out. But if what you're looking for is a third-party opinion, it's probably not them.
And I wanna hear the
I will
good
say
and the
Steve
bad.
Adams, Centralized Public Finance, has told me no. He was like, you don't wanna do that, on a couple of things.
And I like the idea of the language of it being direct, but also vague enough to include the roads like we talked about. So that, I think
We'll make
that's
sure
something we
we
would like.
have a broad,
Yeah, I think we're gonna have,
priorities change over time, and I think
Mr. Hawkins will be back in here, towards our next council meeting, talk about Dues Drive. We may actually have a path forward for, doing that right, which will require some street funds.
Good.
Good to have options.
All right.
Any more questions or comments from council?
Growth in population is a good thing. Overall, the whole picture
I mean,
with bonds.
oh, yes, with bonds, yes.
It is.
Yes.
If we had a crystal ball and we could tell 10 years from now where it would be, it'd be wonderful, wouldn't it?
So part of the grant that we're applying for, the CDBG, RCP, MIT that we keep talking about with you
Alphabet.
all, the comprehensive plan will include kind of a demographic and growth projection study. We're just
Good.
not quite there yet, but that is
Which-
one of the aspects of it, so
tell
hopefully
you,
we'll have
man.
some idea.
Which I know the commissioners, I was in a meeting the other day, they're predicting pretty significant growth for Smith County, and a lot of houses where they need to come
I
live.
mean,
Oh.
we've had 20% growth in the last 5 years.
I mean, we're so
Population.
fortunate and I mean really blessed. I could name you nightmares.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't see any way it ain't going but up. I really don't. Who knows? But I just believe it. I have the faith. People love our town.
Mayor and Council, to update you on a couple of other things that could have capital project implications as we move forward, just so you know kind of where we stand on some of the others. TJ did meet with Kimley Horn today and has been talking about the sewer extension to Wildcat Mart and down Magi, and so they're gonna start scoping that out and working on design for that. Because we are gonna start paying off some debt out of our water and sewer fund and have some capacity there going forward that could be reimbursed through the water and sewer fund.
Are there existing residents that they would hook up on water or wastewater there?
Got all that in the Quail Run back behind it.
Well, Quail Run is on our sewer currently,
Okay.
down at the bottom of the hill, is on sewer currently, but we have annexation agreements with Wildcat Mart and one homeowner on Magi Road, for sewer extension.
So we're satisfying an annexation agreement.
We're satisfying annexation agreements, but it does give the potential for other businesses or homeowners along
Gotcha.
those routes to connect and tie in with the understanding that they would have to come into the city limits to do so.
And if
So-
those vast forests that are on the south side of Magi are ever annexed and developed, then you get us one step closer.
Yes, so,
And there's benefits of city sewer versus septic.
yes,
Lots of benefits.
lots of benefits.
Okay.
If you've ever had to replace a septic system or have one pumped or have one overflow or,
Yeah, I grew up
Yeah.
with it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can get rid of your aerobic sprinklers.
Ugh,
Quite a few
that's
things.
horrible
So-
anyway. Ugh.
So that would be to satisfy annexation agreements. We are also working with Kimley Horn to scope out, and we'll probably have to do this in pieces just because the cost is pretty significant to either a water or wastewater master plan. We may do the wastewater side first, that's where you have a few more concerns. We're doing some smoke testing down on Quail Run to determine what kind of inflow and infiltration we're having to our septic system down there because we had a lift station overflow, so we're doing some repairs down there.
Where's this?
Down at Quail Run.
Quail Run. Okay, thank you.
State Farm lift station, we're looking at that capacity there. I mean, we just have a lot of things in the works right now. So when you start seeing some engineering costs, you'll know why. We're trying to get some design work done so that we can start fixing some things, so that we aren't in an issue or a situation where we're behind. Start cash
Right.
funding some of those things and improvements where we can.
And that's through fund balance, like existing funds that we have.
The engineering part is, until we start getting a better idea of what the design costs, like we may not be able to do the Wildcat Mart and Magi sewer extension through cash funding. We may, depending on when it falls with some of that debt falling off, we'll just have to wait and see. But until we have design, we don't know what those costs are gonna be. And then a couple of grant applications that we have out, you all probably saw, the police department received the ETCOG JAG grant for a patrol car. We're still in the process for the CDBG, RCP, MIT funding. I did talk to Mark Priestner today about the Safe Streets for All grant program, and we're gonna get with their funding people this week about putting in an application for that. And that is for a transportation safety plan. You have to have a transportation safety plan in order to qualify for other transportation grants to be competitive, so we're gonna start working on that. And there's one more that I'm missing.
Was Acrotap on one of those?
So we need to do the Safe Streets for All in order to qualify for the
Okay.
ACROTAB
Yeah.
sidewalk project.
Hmm.
And I don't remember what the one other one is that we're working on, but anyway, a lot of things
So I'm
going
getting a
on.
cramp in my calf.
Yeah.
That's,
Is that
So all of
old age?
those are
Little
potential
bit,
capital projects that we'll be looking at and could be eligible for this funding should your priorities change or anything come up in the meantime. Oh, and a Texas Parks and Wildlife grant, that's the other one for Shahan Park. And then they're also, half is working to design some pocket or neighborhood park designs that we could kind of plug and play into neighborhoods, so they would all be similar amenities, and depending on what size we have, we could go with that, have construction documents ready, and as developments came on, or we had the opportunity for funding, we could issue those and move
Nice.
pretty quickly.
What about, a new water well down at Rose Garden? Rose Center, you know, the
So
Rose.
I think we need a water master plan to really understand what our needs and capacity would be. It's something that's on the list, I just don't know that it's our highest priority right now. I think we're okay on the capacity front. The biggest, I think, concern we have from a capacity standpoint is when we have to rehab the Hagan Road water tower, what we do while that water tower is out of commission.
Yeah.
So that's probably our biggest kind of thing we're trying to work on from a water supply standpoint.
So when it comes to something like that, would that cause us to have to buy water from Tyler during that time period?
It's
or-
not so much about producing
it's
the water,
storage, right?
it's the storage of
Yeah,
the water.
okay.
So we'll work closely with our engineers on that, but that's probably the biggest thing that's,
I wanna try to do that project during the winter time.
yeah, not during the summer, for sure. So, those are just some of the things that we're working through that have capital project, implications as we move forward.
So the main thing going back to this bond is, if we do this bond, and we get those projects going, and something large rears its head up, we're gonna have to do a bond for it, and it could increase tax rates. That's the only scary thing, if something big pops up. So, in all the stuff we have, all the capital projects we have, that would be outside of this 15 million, is there anything that you're afraid of?
It would have to be catastrophic.
Like a 10 million, like a tornado come wipe something out, or like
I mean,
$10 million type project is what it would have to be.
our wastewater treatment plant would have to be deemed unusable.
Okay.
I mean, because we have significant cash reserves. I mean, we have 6 months worth of operating reserves on hand.
Okay, cool. That's what I wanted.
So, if a sewer line fails and it needs to be replaced, we have the capability to replace it.
Cool.
Now, if we have I don't know what our biggest water main is, even a 12-inch main, a section of it, we would replace that through operational
I think we have
funds.
24s in some places.
Maybe, yeah.
No, that's good. That's what I wanted to hear. So, cool.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for coming together on short notice for this. It just seemed like a whole lot to digest in a single meeting. Just to
thanks
give
for
you
getting
some
it
time to
ready.
think about it, kind of come up with some more questions maybe during that
And
council.
again, I compliment the staff. Thank you for the heads up.
it will be on the
Madam
agenda for us to vote.
Yes,
Okay.
on the 22nd. I just don't like to put you all on the spot at like one meeting, be like, this is the first you heard about it, take action.
While we're White House strong.
Mayor, do you need a motion to adjourn?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, stay here. The time is 6:38. We're adjourned.
All right.